Can you predict how happy you're going to be after a decision without actually having made that decision? That's our challenge for today. Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to things that I've learned from the science of decision making that are just broadly useful in everyday life. And as always, please remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, follow, because that tells the algorithm to send this video out. Okay, today I'm going to try to explain a little bit of probability theory to you in like 3 minutes. Trigger warning for those of you who've been told you're bad at math. This is going to be a tiny bit of math. Don't run away. You're not bad at math. You were just not taught math well. Okay, remember back a couple weeks ago, I introduced you to Aya and her decision about whether or not to break up with her wife, Priya. Her big question was all the what ifs. Last week, we talked about utility. We talked about assigning happiness points to each of the possible outcomes. And that's all well and good, but you still don't know which outcome's going to happen. Okay, tiny bit of math. How many penalty kicks in soccer actually score? It's 70%. 72, but we'll use 70. Any one penalty kick, completely random. You don't actually know if it's going to get into the net or not. Just like a decision, you don't know what's going to happen at the other side of that kick. You know that 70% of penalty kicks score a point, but you don't know if that one's going to score a point. Would it be weird if I told you, though, that you could actually assign a point value to any penalty kick? Penalty kick itself, totally random. But 70% of the time, that penalty kick gives you 1 point. 30% of the time, that penalty kick gives you 0 points, which means, on average, every penalty kick is worth 0.7 points. 70% times 1, 30% times 0, add them up together, you get 0.7 points on average for every penalty kick. What we just did there is something called expectation. We don't know that this penalty kick will be a 1 or a 0, but we know that the expected score from that penalty kick is 0.7 points. Now we can put utility together with this expectation. Let's use Aya as an example. Remember, she's debating whether or not to stay with her wife Priya or start this new relationship with somebody she met named Daniel. Let's just evaluate the outcomes of her leaving. 1, that relationship with Daniel is incredible. 2, that relationship with Daniel devolves. Or 3, she loses both relationships and she ends up alone. Using last week's techniques, Aya had assigned happiness points to each of those outcomes. 90 for the best, 20 for the middle, 5 for the worst. Aya, as you'll find out, was a bit of a pessimist. So she felt like there was a 30% chance that if she left her marriage, started a relationship with Daniel, that relationship would get really, really bad and she would get the worst case outcome. She gave it only about a 60% chance that the relationship with Daniel would be incredible. That leaves 10% for the outcome in the middle. Now we have all the information that we need to figure out Aya's expected happiness. We can multiply those together and then add them up. And then we can say that in expectation, even though we don't know exactly what will happen to Aya, she has 57.5 happiness points on average if she chooses to leave the relationship. In this week's blog post, I go through the calculation also for whether Aya stayed. And at the end of all that, you have an expected happiness if Aya leaves, an expected happiness if Aya stays, and you choose the one that gives you the most expected happiness. You can find that blog post at markschreim.com/blog or at solvingforwhy.substack.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts. This is a lot to cram into 3 minutes, so let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next month.